All right, welcome in Monday Fun Day here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri alongside Tom Vecchio as we are getting you ready for, well, let's face it, football will be here before we know it, not to mention a Major League Baseball trade deadline. We got one Major League Baseball game heading to the top of the ninth right now, Texas and Seattle. Kumar Rocker started that game against George Kirby. Texas up 7-3 right now in the top of the ninth. And then we got a whole lot more baseball, including the lowly Miami Marlins here trying to undo a dubious record of franchise record of losing 12 straights, which is what they are currently on, a 12-game losing streak. We certainly send our thoughts and prayers to our good friend Craig Misht here, who is having to cover this team right now. But, Tom, yeah, it's an interesting time of year because camps are opening up in the NFL, college football practices here getting going. And, of course, man, something tells me this trade deadline in Major League Baseball might be a little crazier than we anticipate. Maybe it lives up to the hype finally over the next week or so.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot going on. We have a real NFL football game next week, which I know everyone's going to be excited about. We're looking at position battles across both the NFL and college, who's winning what job, who's going to be starting, who's not going to be starting. We have the trade deadline, which is actually starting to gain some momentum. And there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of what have yous, as people like to say. We had Shea Langoliers, who was a trade candidate for a lot of teams. He's now out for the season. That means teams are probably going to have to be ramping up their offers and overspending to get other players. We got pitchers. The Cubs are DFAing Jameson Taillon just a little while ago. They desperately need pitching help. They're going to go out and spend a fortune to get someone like Reed Detmers. We actually may have an exciting trade deadline, which is exactly a week away. It's the 3rd at 5 p.m. if I remember correctly. So hopefully we're leading to something good. We have a full slate to get to today, and we'll touch on plenty of football along the way.
Tom, I am just thankful that I think beyond a shadow of a doubt, the Yankees unquestionably will be buyers in this trade deadline, which as long as you have that, then you know exactly there's going to be a lot of talk. There's going to be a lot of hype. I mean, Boone looked like a deer caught in the headlights after losing 11-4 last night to the Phillies, although they won 2 out of 3 in that series. But even he said that the front office is like grinding the phones, trying to figure out what they can do. Bellinger obviously going on the IL, not great. I don't know that they're comfortable with where Aaron Judge is going to be in the next month. Is Stanton ever coming back? They need a catcher. And you mentioned it, Langoliers being out there. There's not a whole lot else out on the market and available here. So the Yankees being buyers, I think, is great for this trade deadline. The question is, will they overpay? And could this be a Scooble or I mean, it's got to be a bat, right? It's not going to be a pitcher for the Yankees.
It really should be a bat for the Yankees, and honestly, multiple bats. People are talking about Ryan Jeffers, a catcher. Lane Thomas they need an outfielder, losing Bellinger. They had to call up Spencer Jones, obviously, the other day, get him some reps. There just seems to be no amount of consistency with them, but it does stir the pot, essentially, knowing that the Yankees are going to be active and knowing that they actually have a really, really strong farm system to draw from and those prospects they could use as trade chips. Now, I would say for any team out there, if they're going to be trading for Scooble, I would say you'd like to know that you can re-sign him long-term, but that's not going to be the case because we know he's going to hit free agency. Like, this is what's just going to happen with a pitcher of his quality. Scott Boras' client, he's going to hit free agency to hit the market just to see what he's worth. So between the Yankees, I think the Phillies, they still need another bat, and they still want some pitching help. The Red Sox, after the past 3 weeks, they're all of a sudden back in it. They need another pitcher, another hitter as well. So the big market teams look to be spenders, and that's ultimately what we want to see from a fan perspective. That's what creates a lot of excitement, a lot of movement, ultimately.
I'll say this. I think there's a couple of names that came up. I mean, look, we obviously know the Yankees' relationship with the Padres, Yankees' relationship with, the Twins. I think Jeffers is very interesting for the Yankees, but What about Abrams to the Yankees here? They just traded for Connolly early, right? So pitching is certainly something they'd be interested in. Will Warren could be out there. They've got a couple of big arms in the minor leagues. Boy, CJ Abrams looked really good in a Yankee uniform, wouldn't he?
He would. Listen, if Will Warren, Elmer Rodriguez, maybe it'd be Spencer Jones or Jason Dominguez. I would like to see them not part with George Lombard in the minors. I'd like to see him not move him. But from a Nationals perspective, you traded Soto to get Mackenzie Gore and CJ Abrams. Those are the two top prospects in the Juan Soto deal a couple of years ago. You traded away Mackenzie Gore in the offseason, and now you're potentially trading away CJ Abrams. That seems crazy to me from a Nationals perspective. How do you sell that to the fans saying we traded away a generational talent to get these two top prospects back, and then we just traded them in back-to-back years? That seems crazy to me. I would love to see Abrams in the Yankees uniform. I don't know how the Nationals can sell that to the fan base.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're interested in selling anything to the fan base at this particular point. But the good news is they get to beat up on Max Scherzer tonight, so they'll feel a little bit better about themselves. One question I have to ask is, and I'm still not sure of this, great sweep by the Padres over the Marlins on the weekend. I'll give them credit, heading into the All-Star break, out of the All-Star break. They seem to have figured some things out. But, you know what Preller is. Is Mason Miller going to be in a Padres uniform? Is any of that back end of the bullpen going to be in a Padres uniform next week?
I think Mason Miller should be in a Padres uniform if they're trying to compete. You can't be getting rid of the best part of your team because it hasn't been the frontline pitching. It hasn't been the offense until as of late. The offense has certainly turned things around in a big way. But for a while, the Padres were the bottom 5, bottom 3 offenses in the MLB. And Mason Miller was the best thing the Padres had going for them. To trade him away signals to me that they are looking for a rebuild. There are only so many elite closers in the game, and getting rid of one, granted, they would get a haul back from him. From any team, they would get, I would say, 3 or 4 top 25 prospects, top 50 prospects from a given team, probably a relief pitcher, active in the MLB. You get a lot of players back, and it'd be great to do so. But I don't know what the path of the team would be if you were 2 games out of the wild card and then trading away your best asset.
It would be tough. They do have some availability in that back end. They got one of the best back ends in the bullpen that teams come postseason play. We know this would kind of overpay. So I think there is a good opportunity. And by the way, Mason Miller's under contract till what? 2029? It doesn't, so they're not really like they have to unload some gaudy contract or anything along those lines, but now might be the time if you're hitting the reset button for the Padres. Now might be the time, which brings us back to Scooble. And if I hear one more person mention the Dodgers, I'm going to scream here. But I'm not sure what the Dodgers are thinking about doing. I guess with a looming lockout, maybe if I'm the Dodgers, what do I care how much money I spend or what I go out and get? Really at this point?
With the CBA and the potential changes that could be coming, or the rumored changes between a salary cap and a salary floor, and no more deferred money. And because when we think of deferred money, we only think of the Dodgers. We don't think of other teams. We don't think, the Royals have found this way to get past the red tape and do deferred money. No, everyone thinks of the Dodgers. So you might as well all go chips to the middle because you don't know how much you're going to be able to do in the coming years with these contract situations, footnotes that you're adding to a lot of these players. You might as well take one more swing at it.
I'm with him. What do you care what people have to say? You're either playing baseball next year or you're not. But at this point, Dodgers have proven they figure out ways to find money to bring guys in. Boy, oh boy, there are some interesting names that could very well be wearing different uniforms. Hopefully, Volpe will be wearing a different uniform when it's all said and done. Did I say that out loud as a Yankee fan? I think I did. All right, much more to go. We're going to start diving into some of these games coming up this hour in Major League Baseball as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
Come in a lot more better prepared to play than say we did, having to learn some of the things that that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list than only, 8% right now on Call Sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron. Listen, I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on this Monday in the SportsGrid Network. The final Monday of July, Tom. Can you believe that? Joe Raineri, Tom Vecchio here with you as we're getting ready for, I think, what is surprisingly going to be maybe a pretty crazy trade deadline in Major League Baseball, as you got a lot of teams all bunched up in both leagues, vying for a couple of wild card spots, opportunities. Still a lot to be decided. And we've got a schedule here beginning tonight in some spots that are going to go a long way into deciding if some teams are going to be sellers or not sellers. And you don't have to look any further. And my goodness, what a difference 3 weeks makes. We were talking just 21 days ago, Tom, about the Marlins being buyers, possibly, that they would not be selling, Sandy Alcantara. They would not, Liam Hicks. They were on pace, 89, 90 wins. They were second, I think, alone in the wild card. And yeah, they have not won a game since. So a 12-game losing streak, which I think this series against the Phillies, who, by the way, after the All-Star break, have not been great at all either. This is a pretty big series here, I think, for both of these teams starting here tonight. You got Wheeler, unfortunately, for the Marlins. Wheeler's on the mound for the Phillies. Phillips on the mound for them here tonight. I mean, listen, nice win last night, Phillies, on Sunday Night Baseball, but you almost got swept by a Yankees team that can't score more than 3 runs a game. So this is a pretty big spot here for both these teams tonight, no?
It really is. And, the Marlins losing streak is something I, talked on Pro Baseball Today about. And I feel like it's almost taken on a life of its own, just as the Red Sox winning streak has, where we got to remember, prior to the All-Star break, Joe, the Marlins got swept by the Guardians. That means the last time they won a game was prior to the All-Star break. And because there's so much time, it feels so much longer than it actually is. And that takes on a life of its own. The same thing the Red Sox, like, oh, you're at 10 wins, 12, 13, all of a sudden, like, hang on, we're saying a franchise record. To see a minus 186 line for an away team against a home team that was just in the playoffs, that seems like a big, big line. And granted, as you said, the Phillies have not been good. They managed one win against the Yankees. They almost got swept by the Dodgers. They managed to win there. So on this side of the All-Star break, they have not been doing well. But Zach Wheeler himself has been lights out, especially as of late. So the Marlins, when it rains, it pours, and they need a win. I don't know if it's coming tonight against Zach Wheeler, but I also don't want to bet the minus 186 line.
20-6 is what the Marlins were in the month of June. They were destroying everybody. And then just like that, went into the All-Star break, came out, and not good. But not a great hitter's ballpark tonight. We got a total sitting at around 7.5. You got a first 5 total at about 4. Now, I'll say this about Phillips. He's got about a 3.5 ERA, but yeah, that's much better than what he actually is. But he's only given up 2 home runs, I think, in this ballpark all year. And he's a ground ball pitcher, which against a struggling lineup here, if he navigates, Schwarber and Harper, I don't know how many runs are being scored in this game, no?
I would agree, especially the under in the first 5, like you said. Like I can trust Zach Wheeler to do his thing and go out there and give up maybe 1 run, have 6, 7, 8, 9 strikeouts, whatever it's going to be, if you can give us 6 innings. And based on what the Phillies have been doing and with Phillips, his ground ball tendencies, the under 5.5, I'm seeing it's a little bit juiced at -148 in the first 5. So, shot for the best line, but 4.5 seems pretty reasonable to not get there in the first 5 between these 2 pitchers, and not just the pitchers, the dynamic of the offenses right now.
Yeah, it's, I think, and again, I'm not a big believer in backing teams, Tom, who have to travel off of Sunday Night Baseball.
Right.
That's kind of what the Phillies are here. The Yankees are going to be the other half of that equation. We'll talk about them coming up. But at this point, the psyche of this poor Marlins team, who, by the way, they got swept by the Padres, but they weren't in San Diego. They were home. They've been home. So could this be the time that they get it done? Because I wouldn't be shocked, but it doesn't feel like 4 runs wins. I think most, Tom, is that fair to say? Because I don't think we're getting another 11-run outburst by Philadelphia here.
I don't either. And, this is a really good example of if people like to back trends for Sunday night teams that, are playing the next day. They also have to travel, Sunday night teams that are traveling. The thing I would say about the Marlins is I know it's Zach Wheeler, but if not now, when? If you can't beat a team that's coming off of Sunday Night Baseball when you've been sitting at home, granted, things have not been going well, but you've been sitting at home rested, at least from yesterday. If not now, when are you going to win? Because it is a tall mountain to climb against Zach Wheeler and that pitching staff of the Phillies. Not the offense, the pitching staff.
So with trade deadline coming up here, you got to think Philadelphia, it's a very veteran-laden team, right? You got to think maybe Philly is in the market as well as a possible buyer. But if they don't win a game soon, I'm sorry. Miami, as much as they wanted to tell us that, Alcantara won't be wearing a Yankee uniform, Alcantara is going to be wearing somebody else's uniform. And it could be as soon as next week here, Tom, if this doesn't turn around.
You would think of where we were, like you said, 21 days ago, and you'd be like, the Marlins are buyers. Frankly, if things even out over this week and they just go, let's call it 500 over this week, I think they'll just stand pat. Not buyers, not sellers. They just won't make any moves because there are 3 games out of the wild card, right? So they can't sell. They can't reasonably sell, but they're also not going to go all chips to the middle because they've just been so terrible over these last 3 weeks. I think they would just stand pat and maybe move a back end, middle reliever for a prospect or vice versa, but they can't make any major moves because they've done nothing over these past 3 weeks. If things had been great, then they would buy, but they've been terrible and they're just barely out of it. I will say though, we see the Diamondbacks and the Pirates playing each other. So in this, starting today, some of those teams are going to lose, or one of those teams are going to lose multiple games this series just because that's how things are going to happen. So it does put the Marlins in a spot to maybe gain a game or 2 before Sunday and Monday.
Listen, and they have some pieces people would be willing to put. I mean, listen, Max Meyer has got a neck injury, which he was one of the best pitchers that nobody talked about this season here, Tom. Yuri Perez, they left him out to dry on Saturday because they were afraid to bring in the bullpen. He's another guy that these are guys that can absolutely help contenders, and you got to wonder, is Miami in the market maybe to sell some of these pieces? We'll know quickly. I'll tell you that. We got more MLB tonight to talk about next here on The Grid.
come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Call Sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Tom Vecchio as we're getting you ready here for a nice slate of baseball here tonight. We told you about a 12-game losing streak. Not great for the Marlins. They're taking on the Phillies here, and the Phillies have absolutely not been good since the All-Star break. But Tom mentioned a game also coming up in the 6:40 time slot, a game between two teams battling in the wild card spot. And this series, Tom, as we get ready to turn the calendar into August between Arizona and Pittsburgh, is going to tell us a lot about these two teams here. Now, you look at the pitching matchup and you're like, ugh, Mitch Keller going up against Merrill Kelly. Ugh. Listen, Merrill Kelly's been horrific in May and June. Turned it around here over the month of July. Started to figure it out, although he still doesn't miss bats. He still doesn't strike out enough guys. And he gives up far too many home runs. And Mitch Keller looked good against the Yankees last time out, but I don't trust him as far as I can throw him, Tom. And both these lineups, Pittsburgh can hit home runs. Arizona is one of the best hitting lineups against righties over the last couple of weeks. What are we doing? Are runs coming in this game?
You would like to think, and I just want to preface it, before we get into game by game stuff, we have a lot of potential rain tonight. Basically, the only games that don't have rain issues are Miami, Los Angeles Angels, the Athletics in Sacramento, and San Francisco Giants. Every other game has some type of rain issue. I'm not saying it's going to be major, but just keep an eye out there. There's some wind, et cetera, et cetera. I don't like Merrill Kelly. I don't like Mitch Keller. I think they're very middle of the road to below average pitchers. Specifically, I like Esmeralyn Valdez on the Pirates for 2+ HRR, hit run RBI. I get around -114 or so. With Merrill Kelly this year versus righties, he's allowing a 349 WOBA and a 474 slugging with a high fly ball rate. He's allowing 1.60 home runs per 9 versus righties. With Valdez, we have immense power. He does strike out a lot, but he's got plenty of power. I see this as a runs game. I don't think it's going to continue throughout the entire series because of how important it is for both teams. But this is actually a really interesting matchup. Arizona and Pittsburgh at the end of July, we're talking about two playoff or postseason bound teams. I don't know how many people would say that coming into the season that we're talking about Pittsburgh and Arizona.
I feel like I've seen this with Arizona in the past. Once we get into like the August, September time frame, they seem to figure it out. They're getting big production now. Corbin Carroll's finally figured it out. He was awful for a stretch here in July, but they have been crushing it. I don't like either bullpen. So I think if both of these starters getting into trouble, we're going to have some issues here. I like runs coming in this matchup here. And Keller, again, 4.23, and he's not even that good as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think there's going to be some guys that you can focus in on that are going to have a good night, to say the least, here in one of these matchups, and that's Pittsburgh and Arizona. You got the Marlins and you get the Phillies, and then you have the return of Max Scherzer, which has to be laughable on so many different levels here, Tom. Are you going with his strikeout prop tonight? Well, how are you approaching Scherzer and his 11 ERA against one of the best hitting teams against righties here in the Nats?
I'm not approaching it. I'll tell you that. And if you're going to back anything for the Nationals, I think you could go a team total. You could go first 5 team total. I think both of those are fine. Listen, this is a super fun storyline in terms of baseball. Scherzer, his historic career, returning to the Nationals, not the team that he first started with. You've got to remember that Scherzer was originally on the Diamondbacks. They let him go. Big mistake by them. But this is a fun game. It's fun to see a player back, especially at his age, go back to a team. However, he's been terrible. The Blue Jays, not really concerned about their offense at all. I know we have, what's this guy's going? Yearn for he's the opener for the Nationals. Not worried about that. Yep. Nationals team total or first 5 team total. I think they get to Scherzer.
The only problem that I have, and I'm with you, because I think split this game in half. 2.5 first 5 team total for Washington, up and over. Even 5, I would go over here in the first 5. The problem with the full game total, which is sitting at 10 right now, is that Alvarez is coming in. He's going to be the bulk guy. He's a lefty. Can we trust Toronto to add enough offense in this game to get it over here, Tom?
It's a great question, and that's what it comes down to. If you're betting the over, you really got to think the Blue Jays do minimum 3, hopefully 4. And then if you can get the 4, you get 4-5 from the Nats. That's what puts you within striking distance. But to think that the Blue Jays are going to put up 5 by themselves, I think is a bit much.
Crazy, right? It's going to be. I can't trust. Of all the offenses, I think Toronto and their 2.5, barely 3 runs a game is not something I'd be playing it over with here tonight. But we got more coming up here as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid. All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Tom Vecchio as we are getting you ready to hear for a nice slate of Major League Baseball games. One in the book already here. We had an afternoon game at Globe Life where the Rangers get it done over the Maras. 7-3 there. Rocker gets it done over Kirby. So one game is in the books, and then we got a couple of games coming up in that 6:40 time frame. We talked Diamondbacks Pirates. We talked about the Marlins and their 12-game losing streak against the Phillies. Got another interesting game with two teams that are not out of it, but boy, do they scream mediocrity here. The Orioles and the Tigers. Bradish against Montero. Now, to his credit, Montero, you're back to the bullpen. Nope, now I need you as a spot starter. Nope, now you're back to the bullpen. He's actually been pretty good and reliable in this role for them this year. The minute Flaherty went on the IL, he's all of a sudden a starter again now. They're a slight favorite at home. Bradish, which version do you get? We know he can strike some guys out, but who do we trust in this spot here, Tom? 8.5 is a total.
Really interesting game because someone has to win the series, and they both need the wins because they're both in the thick of the wild card race, granted at the bottom end of it. Bradish has been pretty darn solid over the last month or so. When it comes to Montero, he is a slight fly ball pitcher, very slightly at 45% compared to a 40% ground ball rate. However, those fly balls don't necessarily hurt him because he's a medium contact pitcher, 50% medium contact, only 31% hard contact. And because of the wind situation that we have going on in Detroit, it's across the field. It's not in or out, it's across the field. I don't know if we're going to have too many fly balls that end up as home runs because the wind's going to impact it. I see this as a lower scoring game, honestly. I know we're not dealing with the best bullpens when it's all said and done. Middle of the road, I think you can put them both there. But I kind of like Detroit, and just because I like Montero slightly better than Bradish, at least given the circumstances of the wind, and I think that will help him. Now, Bradish can certainly punch plenty of hitters out at the plate, but I'm not sold on Bradish.
Yeah, he's been, 5 of his last 6 starts, to your point, quality starts. The guy in the month of July has really... He's been good, maybe the best and outside of Rogers, who I think was a train wreck before he went to the IL. And then once he got off the IL, he figured it out. You got a Tigers who just lost a pair of 1-run games to Kansas City, of all things, over the weekend. And the Orioles, they've lost 4 of their last 6. They are coming off a series with the Braves from the weekend. They had travel here now to Detroit. Are we buying Baltimore as a legit contender to make a run at a wild card here?
I'm not. I think Baltimore's a team that just stays put. And if they have any moves, they're going to be minor moves, but they're not going to be consequential. They're not going to be massive sellers because their players have underperformed and or the players that they would theoretically sell, they have locked up long-term and or are considered cornerstones of the franchise. They're not going to trade Pete Alonso or Gunnar Henderson. Adley Rutschman's name has been out there, but they're also not in a position to be buyers because they're so mediocre this year that they can't be leapfrogging teams. And again, so I say a lot about a lot of teams this year. 1 or 2 moves doesn't fix the Orioles. You need like 4, 5, 6, 7 moves that can actually put them in a spot to compete, and that doesn't happen at the trade deadline. That happens in the offseason.
Listen, all eyes are going to be for Detroit on Skubal, right? So this is those were tough losses over the weekend of Kansas City, man. They really were. Because if they win those and they had a 3-game winning streak rolling, and then they lose a couple of 1-runners to a team they should not be losing to. So the question becomes, all of a sudden, these games are pretty important. Is Skubal wearing a Detroit uniform here? That's the big question, because what happens if he is traded? Just stick a fork in the season. They're basically punting, right?
That's what it comes down to. He'll have his last start. I believe it's going to be on Wednesday for the Tigers. And, it's not just about his one start. He doesn't need to go out there and have 15 strikeouts in order for him to be a trade candidate. It's just about them winning games this week. That's all it comes down to. Them winning games and picking up games in the wild card. And obviously, they can't control the other teams that lose. They have to go and take care of their own business. Losing 2 games to Kansas City really put them behind the 8 ball. But Skubal not being traded, and then them not making the playoffs would be a disaster.
It would be absolutely disastrous, to say the least there. And I keep hearing different names for different pitchers here, and I think it's going to be fascinating. Tampa is always in a market for pitching. Philadelphia could use some pitching. But the Nationals here, Tom, are one game out of the wild card spot, one game right now. And all I keep hearing is Foster Griffin, who's been one of their better pitchers, starters this year. Nobody's been hotter than he has. And yet I keep hearing him associated with the Rays or are we punting on the season if we're the Nationals here?
To me, it's a wait and see. And it's solely because, I honestly don't know who the Nats play after the series versus the Blue Jays this week. But this is a winnable series for them. And they are chasing down both the Diamondbacks and the Pirates. And again, that one of those teams are going to lose multiple games this series just because that's what's going to happen. So they have a spot to jump into an actual wild card spot come the end of this series versus the Blue Jays or the end of the weekend. I don't think they can make a determination until Sunday night when that happens and knowing where they sit. Because if you're in a wild card spot, you can't be trading away Foster Griffin and CJ Abrams. Now, if you fall back over the course of the next week, that's a different story. But I think it's a pure wait and see for them. And if you trade any of them, it should be Foster Griffin.
4 games at Atlanta, 4 games at Philadelphia, and 3 games at Cincinnati. That is their upcoming schedule there. So it's a big road trip coming up for them. And Atlanta on the 30th this week. So all of a sudden, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the teams that you got to chase are in front of you. You're going to be facing them here over the next week and a half. So I think Foster Griffin on the mound would be much better. I'm not a big believer. We saw Baltimore do this a couple of years ago. We saw Seattle do it where teams like this, hey, how great would it be for the fan base to get into the postseason? And they're like, we're not really about this postseason. We're going to kick the can down the road. Like, we've heard this how many times from teams like that. And yet, what? Where are they? It's the here and now. If you have a chance to make the postseason with as much mediocre baseball, why not push it all in here at this point? Why are we trading pieces away?
I would not be trading pieces away, and that's just me, especially the CJ Abrams move, which we talked about before. I can understand trading away Foster Griffin. That is a team bound for the postseason that, teams want that type of pitcher in their lineup, in their rotation, being a second or third starter for a lot of teams. That's what they need. The Abrams thing is a cornerstone of your franchise alongside James Wood. Those are your 2 pieces. Yep. That's what you need to be building around. That's what I think they should be keeping. Now, again, if they get some offer that's over the top, it is also in the GM's best interest to do what's the best for the franchise. And if you can get back 6 prospects or some crazy number, you have to also consider that.
This is going to be interesting with these middle-of-the-road teams, Tom, that have an opportunity for a dejected fan base to really make a run at maybe a postseason. But I don't know how happy these fan bases are going to be when in another week or so, and all of a sudden their favorite and best players are no longer on the roster. I think that's going to be extremely interesting, to say the least. So a lot of question marks on. I think Foster Griffin, don't get me wrong, you send him to the Rays, I'm giving them the heads up to win the American League East. I think they've got a shot at doing some damage. I think if the Phillies get him, I think that's also huge. I think that's the kind of pitcher that could go into teams like that and actually be a difference maker, no?
I would agree totally. They would put themselves just more depth, more quality pitching depth is never, never something a problem to have, or never something you don't want to have when it comes to the postseason. When the Rays play at home, they're a machine. We know that their home road record speaks for themselves. Of that they would excel with a pitcher like Griffin.
I think he's going to make a team very happy here. We got more game time decisions continuing here on the grid.
come in a lot more better prepared to play than say we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Call Sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron. I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in. Here we go. Game time decisions on the SportsGrid network as we are getting you ready here for a big night in Major League Baseball. This is the time of the year, Tom, where all these games matter, especially 3 wild card spots up for grabs. We have division titles far from having been decided already, unless, of course, you're in the National League West, at which point you can just pack a bag. I think Milwaukee is also going to be very interesting, right? Because Milwaukee finds themselves in a spot where how many more are we really going to just burn Miz out the rest of the way when you're pretty much locked up the Central Division, right? So outside of those 2 divisions, everything else very much still up for grabs as we get ready to end July.
It really is. For the Brewers, I think they are going to scale back on Mizorowski just because they have the ability to do so. If they were in second place, they were a game ahead of the Cubs, something along those lines, I don't think they would be doing so, but they're 7 games up in the Cubs. Mizorowski has pitched 120 innings this season. He was at 66 last year, so he's doubled, season over season, his career high, which is crazy. Looking at the division prices, you can still get some pretty fair prices on, a team like the Rays. If you think they're going to win the AL East, they're at -120. The AL Central, every team is plus money. Now, granted, it probably only comes down to the White Sox and the Guardians, but the White Sox are at +125. The Guards are at +160. The Rangers have jumped ahead to -130 in the AL West. We've seen the Mariners take a step back over this past week, obviously losing a few games to the Rangers directly. But the Astros are sitting here at +550, Joe, and they're 2 games back out of the AL West. It seems like a big price considering they're just 2 games back. I have really no interest in betting the NL East because I think it's a mess, and obviously the Dodgers are off the board at this point.
These games matter now. And again, coming out of the All-Star break, don't forget, it wasn't the halfway point. Teams into the All-Star break time played almost 100 games already. So with this trade deadline, we're going to start to get over the next couple of weeks those spots where teams are, they're thinking about the offseason. They're thinking about next year, they're thinking about vacation. So it's a fun time of year. And with all of these races and still so much to be determined, August, it's not going to be the have and have nots. I think we're going to be, I think it's really going to come down to the wire, which I think is great for anybody you know, most people forget about betting Major League Baseball once the All-Star game gets here because football, it's all about football. But I love the market in August, Tom, because that's when it's the most inefficient.
I would agree. Especially come September. And if you are just tracking the NFL or college, it's like, okay, Monday happens. I'm betting Monday Night Football. Then I'm preparing for, the Thursday night games or college football on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm getting ready for Monday again. It's like you forget that we have games throughout the entirety of September. And those are the most important games. And it's also, to your point, when rosters are starting to change. So even when you're going to be seeing some minus 150 lines on a first five, like a minus 50 line on a first five line for a team that's in it versus a team that's completely out of it, that's a pretty good line sometimes. And you can get some really good prices because the market is just not as efficient because the volume for a sportsbook is just, their eyes are turned elsewhere. I'm not saying that they are turning a blind eye and forgetting about baseball, but the volume that they get for MLB is minuscule compared to football and college football when September 1st rolls around.
Yeah, it's really, it really is crazy when you think about it here. And reinforcements could still be on the way. Let's not forget the Dodgers still have a lot of pitcher. I mean, Snell could be, but there's Acuna I believe they just activated him from the IL, right, for the Braves. There are... not to mention you've got the trade deadline, maybe picking up an arm or two here or there could really change the dynamic. But the National League East is fascinating to me. Washington's not going anywhere. I don't think they're going anywhere anyway because there's too much mediocrity. And Atlanta is far from running away with that division with Philadelphia. Having a guy like Acuna back, if they can keep him healthy, are you betting Atlanta to run away with this one here, Tom?
I think they win the division. There's no way I can bet into that price. And frankly, betting against them with injuries, I think that would be a reasonable route to go. And I'm not saying that's what you would do. Their odds right now to make the playoffs are minus 10,000, right? The Dodgers are not on the board. To make the playoffs, the Braves are minus 10,000. The Yankees are minus 8,000. The Rays are minus 8,000. And then it's a drop to the Phillies at minus 900. So the sportsbooks believe the Braves will make the playoffs, whether it's in the division winner in the NL East or via a wild card if they drop a little bit. But I can't find a way to back them to do so. Minus 390 is crazy. The make-the-miss playoff market is very, very interesting considering we're looking at multiple NL teams here that are all at plus money. And these are all teams that are essentially in a playoff spot or one game out. So we can get into some of that later. But as for the Braves, I see no way to back them in terms of a division title or anything along those lines.
Well, they're tonight against the Mets at Citi Field. Perez going for Atlanta, Thornton going for the Mets. No Soto, right? So now Acuna's back in the picture. Since the All-Star break, I think they're averaging 6 runs a game here. Now you get Acuna back. This could be the beginning of the end for the Mets, or is it just the end and now the Braves are going to put them out of their misery?
I would like to think it's the end for the Mets and put them out of their misery, although we did see a quote earlier today that Juan Soto is determined, or he fully believes, or whatever the exact verbiage was, that he will play again this season, despite the fact that he has another hamstring strain, is expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks or whatever it is. Oh, no, excuse me, calf strain for Soto. Bellinger has the hamstring strain. Soto is missing 4 to 6 weeks with the calf strain, and yet he's still expected to return at some point, which is crazy. They should just shut him down. Hopefully this is the end for the Mets. Just put their fans out of their misery. The Braves go in. They sweep the series. If you're a Braves backer, you're happy that Acuna's back. Hopefully he gets the ball rolling, and the Braves lock up the division title if you have them at a good price preseason.
This kid, Zach Thornton, by the way, has been phenomenal. I think he's 18 straight scoreless innings over his last 3 starts. I mean, he has been maybe the one bright spot of this Mets team here. He's a left-hander. I mean, the Mets could certainly give Atlanta a run for their money. Listen, I don't like Perez. I mean, are we really thinking he's going to, even without Soto, is he really coming in on the road and shutting down this Mets offense? Probably.
I don't think so. Yeah. Perez, not a good pitcher when it's all said and done.
No, he's not. Thornton, very good pitcher, by the way. Game Time Decisions continues here on the Grid.
come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Kyle Sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help
I
it.
knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. We just learned, the fate of Bellinger for the Yankees. Tom, you were saying that they just released how long he will be out with this hamstring. How we're pulling hamstrings when it's almost August is a little head-scratching to me. You mentioned Soto with the calf. Now we got a hamstring injury here for Bellinger, but how long? He was hitting cleanup for the Yankees, so how long exactly is he going to be out for?
It says 4 to 6 weeks for grade 2 hamstring strain for Cody Bellinger. So this puts him back, roughly at the middle-ish of September, depending on, what that time frame actually looks like. So if it's just the 4 weeks, he could be back before September 1st, because we're sitting, here on July 27th. He could be back before September call-ups happen. But this, I think, does put a little bit of pressure on the Yankees to add another bat. I think that's where their priority should have been. But I think that pushes that further, pushes that button down further even more, just because there's no Judge, there's no Stanton, and now there's no Bellinger. Jason Dominguez hasn't lived up to it. You bring up Spencer Jones, up and down throughout the season, and he hasn't been amazing. They need another hitter, and maybe it's going to be two, actually, not just one, given the way things are rolling right now.
Well, you mentioned Yankees definitely need. They got to do something behind the plate, right? And you mentioned Langelier's out. I would have thought the Yankees would have went shopping to their farm system, the Athletics. But there are still, you mentioned Jeffers earlier. What about the kid Hunter Goodman there with the Rockies? Is he another name that we should keep an eye on here with the Yankees? There was actually just a report just a few minutes ago from a Yankees beat reporter saying that the Yankees are not ready to give up on Austin Wells because he's so good defensively, right? At the plate issues, the offense are one thing, but he is phenomenal defensively. He's a great pitch framer, which really does make a difference. And now some of the interest in Hunter Goodman has actually subsided because he's actually a liability defensively. That's one of the recent reports that we saw at the end of yesterday into today, early morning today, is that he's amazing offensively. Even if you look at his road splits when he's not at Coors Field, it's not just his stats at Coors Field. His road splits are good, but he's a problem on defense. And it's like, all right, what do you want in the postseason? You want a solid defensive catcher that's not going to allow pass balls, or you want a guy that can hit an extra home run here when you already have some of that in your lineup? So the asking price for Hunter Goodman, knowing his defensive deficiencies, I think is going to be a bit high. You're right about the. I mean, his road numbers. This kid he's got 31 home runs on the year, right? And of course, everyone's like, oh, he's 26 years old, 890 OPS, and he plays at Coors Field. But yeah, I'm looking at his road numbers here. He's a beast, but not exactly what we would consider one of the game's best defensive players behind the plate. And it's a good with the bad. What do you value more, Ty, heading into the postseason? Wells, even though he's hitting 193, or the fact that, he knows the pitching staff and you don't have to worry about defense being a liability there.
Things have been rolling. I got to say the pitching staff. I think having an elite pitching staff with multiple frontline starters, especially with Fried back for the Yankees, and you have him plus Cam Schlittler, AL Cy Young co-favorite alongside Dylan Cease and Garrett Cole. Having those three guys with a catcher that they like and are familiar with, I think is pretty good. And you would like to think that the rest of the other 8 hitters can pick up some of the slack and just do their job.
Yeah, somebody's got it. And we still don't have any word on when Judge is coming back, right? So there's still they're very cloak and dagger about that. And I don't know why they would hold that close to the vest if they knew the answer. If he's coming back in 2 weeks, then tell everyone he's back in 2 weeks. So not saying anything worries me here a little bit, but that just makes this trade deadline going to be even more interesting for a team like the Yankees here. But I don't think we should count them out just yet, although they also made a trade before anybody else. The Red Sox, they've got the Athletics here tonight out on the West Coast. They beat up the Blue Jays again yesterday, 6-1. They're likely not done making moves either from what we understand, but solidify as a wild card team. Is that pretty good, Tom? Would you give them that at least, Boston, right now?
I would. And this is a big week for the Red Sox, a really big week, because they have 4 games versus the Athletics, and then they have 3 versus the Dodgers. So this is a spot that you got to think, worst case scenario, they lose 2 and 3 versus the Dodgers. They can get one of those games. But that means they got to take 3 versus the Athletics. So I really like Peyton Tolley over 5.5 strikeouts tonight for the Red Sox. They're starting pitcher -111. He's got a 26.2% strikeout rate on the season. It's phenomenal. We look to the Athletics. They come in with a 24.2% strikeout rate versus lefties. And part of this handicap is I don't think the Red Sox want to burn their bullpen on day 1 of the road trip. So even if he struggles a little bit in that ballpark in Sacramento, they got to leave him out there to pick up the strikeouts.
Yeah, Perkins has been a mess in that ballpark, too. All right, another hour of game time decisions straight ahead here on the grid.
They come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Call Sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, he had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome in Game Time Decisions on this Monday. Joe Raineri alongside Tom Vecchio. We appreciate you stopping by as we're getting ready for a great night of Major League Baseball action. One game in the books already with Texas handling business 7-3 over the Seattle Mariners. We've got just about 40 minutes or so, a couple of games getting ready to go, including Arizona and Pittsburgh. That'll be one game we'll keep an eye on, as there are, and we are at this time of year where playoff implications very much front and center, and that is one game that is certainly we're going to keep an eye on over this series. In fact, over the next couple of days, you got a team with a 12-game losing streak, the Marlins, playing at home, taking on the Philadelphia Phillies, who beat the Yankees last night, Sunday Night Baseball 11-4, but they have not been playing some of their best baseball in any way, shape, or form. And then, of course, we've got more Yankees versus the White Sox. Cubs and Cardinals, Tom, that has always been one of those series over the years, right? Central Division, don't like one another, hate one another, and yet I think the Cardinals are just fool's gold here. They're one game over 500, and if the Cubs don't pound them into oblivion and end their season, I don't know what to tell them at this point.
A lot of people like to use the term for football, is it paper tigers? People like to use the term for football, and I think that's what we're seeing when it comes to the Cardinals. This is a team that I have not been high on at any point this season. Coming into the year, I said there was a legitimate chance, and I thought that the Cardinals were going to finish last in the NL Central. The Reds made the postseason last year. Granted, they kind of backed themselves in. I thought the Pirates would be better. I thought the Brewers would be good. The Cubs would be good. I thought the Cardinals were going to be the worst team in the NL Central. And then this is really the turning point where I think the other shoe is going to drop and the bottom is going to fall out, because this pitching staff is smoke and mirrors, that they're getting through games and they're only striking out two. You walk three guys, and somehow you get out of the inning with only giving up one run. And they constantly do this. And not just one pitcher, it's multiple pitchers. Now the offense isn't producing. So when these things happen together, the pitching staff, we're actually seeing their true form, and the hitting's not coming to fruition. We're going to see them fall out of the wild card race and really end the season on a bad note. And granted, the Weatherholt signing and Rookie of the Year status for him is great. Jordan Walker has been amazing. The rest of the team, just not there yet.
Yeah, and I really wanted to pull the trigger on the Cubs in this game here tonight, but then I looked like, it's David Peterson throwing on the mound. Granted, he's going up against Liberatore, who is a hot mess, and there's no way you can trust him in any way, shape, or form. The bats of the Cardinals have went MIA. They can't hit, one of the worst in the league over the last couple of weeks. But, I looked, Detroit was his last start on the 21st, that being Peterson, I believe 6 2/3, didn't give up an earned run. Baltimore was the game prior to that, 1 earned run in 5 innings. So are we selling maybe Peterson a little bit short here?
I think we are, especially if you look at some of the entire season stats, and this is always a good conversation. It's like, what's more important, like what a player's done recently or what he's done just in this, of the entirety of the season. So he has been good, and this is also a proving point for him. Like, he's been good, and he should be able to get it done against the Cardinals.
Yeah, weather too. You mentioned some weather issues across the board here tonight. Rain in the forecast. It's a hot, humid summer, and the rain is going to be in the forecast. But Busch Stadium has been just notorious for run suppressing, right? It's not a great hitter's ballpark, but you do have double-digit winds blowing straight out to center field, and you've got temperatures in the mid-90s at the first pitch here. So could this be an overnight, given what we've seen from these two pitchers?
I think so. And, I think if the Cardinals can do 3, maybe 4 runs, I think this would look like a winner. And the Cubs are a super streaky team, but if they can't get 5 or 6 runs of their own in this type of matchup, then what are we even doing here? Like, why are the Cubs even fighting for a playoff spot if they can't be getting runs across in this type of hitting environment against this pitching staff? So you give me 3 runs from the Cardinals, I'll take that, and I think I'll be live to win when it's all said and done.
I love it. Yeah, we got, we had 9 games on total here tonight coming up for you. We're going to cover them all. But don't forget, it's also the NFL season, rather. Camp's opening up this week, and headlines galore, Tom, that we're getting. Very unfortunate situation with Kansas City earlier today that, of course, Bieniemy there, the new old offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy of the Kansas City Chiefs, wife was shot at their Virginia home. He has now left camp to be with his family. Strange story there that we keep getting, different bits of information on. And then, of course, I didn't expect him to be back at all until maybe week 4 or 5, but apparently Danny Dimes is telling anyone who will listen that Achilles that he blew out December 7th, he's good to go. Camp opens up Wednesday, and he expects to be 100% ready to go, a full participant. Did you expect him back this early? Because I certainly didn't.
I didn't, and given the dynamic that the Colts have with Anthony Richardson, I was very uncertain about what the Colts were going to be doing on offense to start the year. If he was not going to play in the preseason, he's saying he's ready for 11-on-11 drills. We're also getting news about, over the weekend about Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers head coach, that was involved in a car accident where he sustained multiple injuries, apparently some of them somewhat serious. They say he's okay. How does that impact the team in terms of preparing for, the start of the season? I will say the only good thing that the 49ers have going is that they don't have a ton of offensive turnover outside of adding Mike Evans, essentially. Like, that is the one thing that they need to focus on, getting, some, on-field chemistry with Brock Purdy. But outside of that, and granted, George Kittle's coming back from an Achilles injury as well, they have largely the same team on offense. And, defenses are always ahead of offenses, we know, early season. But if the offense can just stabilize, I think they'll be okay. Whether or not, Coach Shanahan is there in week 1, because they are traveling to Australia for that game, that's yet to be seen, but I think they'll be okay when it's all said and done. The Daniel Jones thing, I have no insight on, and I need to see him play. I need to see him run around before I have a take on the Colts.
Listen, in case you forgot, they started off the season, easy schedule, 8-2. Remember, Tom? Mm-hmm. And Danny Dimes looked like a new guy. And coaching matters in the NFL, and we get that, right? Shane Steichen and whatever he was doing was working for Daniel Jones. He gets hurt, and then not only Riley Leonard has got to step, but then let's not forget, they brought Phillip Rivers off the bench. Mm-hmm. Like, they brought him off a high school field. Some people forget, it's out of sight, out of mind, right? So, but let's not forget, this was a team that started 8-2, has not won the AFC South, Tom, since 2014. Has not won this division since 2014, and they go into it, and I like the team. I like what they got going. I think it's kind of a prove-me year for a lot, including the coaching staff, but I think without a doubt they need Danny Dimes healthy. I don't care what, if they're going to do it, he needs to be upright. They got to have the running game. I think the defense has kind of gone through a transformation. But the idea that they haven't won since 2014 is scary, is it not?
It is, and it seems much longer than that, just given where they were for the Jacoby Brissett starting some of those. Yeah. They had a lot of quarterback turnover outside, after Luck left, and it seems like they are trying to climb a mountain that is not that far away, but it seems impossible given the dynamic of, the AFC South. And I'm going to say it's not a super strong division overall. We all have our concerns about the Texans and Stroud. The Jags look good on paper, but they don't always put together. The Titans are obviously, starting a new face of their franchise with, Robert Saleh there, and obviously adding in Cam Ward from last year. The division is totally up for grabs. They should be able to win it, but I still have no faith in them until I actually see them play.
Is Anthony Richardson still on the team? Is he in the league? Is he smacking himself with a rubber band? Very interesting season coming up for the Indianapolis Colts. We'll have much more, though, as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
They come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Call Sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Tom Vecchio as training camps opening up around the NFL. It is so good, Tom, as we look to round out the month of July here. We still got plenty of Major League Baseball and some great, very tight division races, not to mention we got 3 wild card teams on in both the National League and the American League. Very little has been determined outside of 2 divisions in Major League Baseball at this point, which is crazy, but there is a lot of mediocre baseball going on. But a couple more days, we turn that calendar to August, and it feels good knowing that football is just around the corner, though, Tom, isn't it?
It really does. And this is always the interesting stretch of the season where the MLB All-Star break comes and goes. And then we have this lull before we get the actual training camps. You're starting to see those highlight catches. You're starting to hear about position battles being won. And then we get the first preseason game, which is always exciting. I also think it's always somewhat of a letdown because we see no starters play the Hall of Fame game. And then we actually get into the first preseason week. And that's when I really think things turn the corner and it's actually football season. This is like the appetizer to it. Once we get to that full first week of preseason and we're actually starting to bet games, you're placing team futures, whatever it is, that's the real exciting time.
So we did also learn that, the Raiders are going to have a new quarterback, right? The number 1 pick is locked up and he's good to go here. And I talked to a friend of mine that's in one of the risk rooms in Vegas, and I don't know if it's just a local thing, but the expectations of this Raiders team this year in that division, Tom, is apparently they're starting to get a lot of money coming in here looking at this Raiders team. They love this Mendoza kid. I'm not sold he's even going to be the starter to begin the year with Kirk Cousins. I think they got Kirk Cousins for a reason, and I'm okay with that. But you got a rookie head coach taking on a team that, I'm sorry, is Matt Crosby still available? Is he even playing on this team anymore? Like, what There's just a lot of unknown with the Raiders. I think they'll be better than they were a year ago, but there's still a lot of questions I have, and they still play in the AFC West, which has got to be a nightmare for them this year.
It certainly shapes up to be one of the hardest, if not the toughest division in the NFL with, Mahomes apparently on track, ready to play week 1. And, a lot of people still have their concerns about the Chargers. Are they actually good? Is Herbert actually good? Regardless of that, you have 3 teams that can make the playoffs in that division. So even if the Raiders are better than they were last year, which I certainly believe they will be, we are expecting Kirk Cousins to start at least week 1. It still puts the Raiders in a very, very tough spot. Whether or not the Cousins thing is the right decision, yet to be seen. But I think he's going to start week 1. I'm not in love with that idea, but they are still playing in the toughest division, and it is a big mountain to climb just to get into the wild card race. And I know a lot of people like to draw comparisons to say, oh, when Jane Daniels went to Washington, rookie quarterback, new head coach, oh, they make the playoffs, they go all the way to the championship games. Like, we can't expecting that to be the model for every rookie quarterback going to a franchise with the new head coach. Like, oh, we're going to have this bolt of lightning and we're going to make the playoffs in the first year. That's not going to happen every time.
Hey, what do you think is going to be? What is the ruling here when it's all said and done on Genty? I was not a big fan of his coming out of college time. I thought wasting a pick at that high on him was just not going to pay dividends. What is the ultimate ceiling you think for him?
So I think everyone agrees that the pick wasn't great, but also what he did last year is, I'm also going to say, it wasn't his fault. And a lot of the numbers suggest that the Raiders' offensive line was atrocious last year, and his yards before contact, which is not his fault, because the offensive line is so terrible, getting hit before he can get back to the line of scrimmage was so disastrous that he wasn't able to do anything. So at least having a competent offensive line, I think he will have leaps and bounds better production this year just because it can at least be stable. And they need him to be stable because that alleviates the pressure and what you put on the shoulders of Mendoza eventually. So I think Genty will be very, very solid. I'm not going to say he's going to be an elite all-pro like Gibbs or Robinson that we have, but I think he'll be in that next tier and a stable running back the Raiders can look to every single season. I truly think he'll be solid.
It's a lot of that's going to depend on the other weapons around him because he didn't stand a chance last year. But second year coming up here, the good news is all the focus will be on the other top draft pick that's going to be on that team and what he does when he gets on the field in Mendoza. One other story we learned, too, was the Cardinals. One of the questions we had, who's going to quarterback for the Cardinals? Not that we expect them to win 3 games, but I guess we know the answer. Jacoby Brissett signs after threatening to hold out, $15.5 million restructuring of the contract. I mean, what choice did they have, Tom?
They didn't. They didn't have many choices. It's 15.5. There's incentives to get it up to 20 or 21 million, whatever it was. It was either that or you start Carson Beck and you're punting another season. And I would say that I don't think paying Jacoby Brissett's a bad idea. At least he brings some type of veteran presence to the team. He has a good on-field connection with Trey McBride and Michael Wilson. You want to get Marv Harrison back fully healthy. You draft Jeremiah Love. The team's not going to be good. They have the lowest win total in the NFL at 4.5, tied with the Miami Dolphins. They are not going to be good. Everyone knows that. But they can at least build on that and say, okay, we can get the rest of the offense moving. If they can teach Carson Beck along the way, maybe he's going to be the future quarterback. Who knows? But at least you have some type of stability at the quarterback position, which is the most important position in all of sports. At least do something with that.
He actually wasn't. He was only a reason that they were even somewhat competitive in those games last year. But I think the fact that Kyler Murray is no longer in the picture, it kind of frees this franchise here a little bit to head in a new direction. LaFleur is the head coach now with the Cardinals. We got a lot of first-year head coaches also coming up. New teams, new digs, new places, new philosophy. Yeah, I got some questions about which one of those is going to be maybe the most successful this season, because none of these guys actually have teams that we think are going to win very many games. But time will tell here as football season is upon us here just around the corner as camps are opening. The good news is a lot more information coming down the pike. We got to get you ready for a ton of Major League Baseball here tonight. We'll break those games down as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
They come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Call Sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron. Listen, I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in here. Game Time Decisions on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Tom Vecchio. We'll get you ready here for some Major League Baseball coming up in about 20 minutes. We got the 6:40 games. Got a couple a little bit later games that we're going to break down as well. Yankees at the White Sox with Max Fried on the mound. Angels and Astros, Brewers and Giants also coming up a little bit later. But get ready for some football, just like Tom and I just laid out for you. Yeah, camps are opening up this week. Whole lot of football coming your way here, and I am all for it. And, we mentioned it, Tom, this season, well, let's face it, this offseason, 10 teams hired new head coaches. So that's 10 new, you got a lot of new blood going on in some of these. It's not the same old. You got Mike LaFleur with the Cardinals we were just talking about. Stefanski's now with Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Jesse Mintner now with Baltimore. Joe Brady with Buffalo. Todd Monken with Cleveland. Good luck, Todd. Clint Kubiak with the Raiders. Jeff Hafley with Miami. Harbaugh with the Giants. Mike McCarthy, who I think people forget is in Pittsburgh now. And good old Robert Saleh there with the Tennessee Titans. So I like some of these situations for some of these guys more than I like it for others. But when you go over this group of 10, I mean, who do you think is going to have maybe some of the most success, maybe win the most games, really be the difference that this organization, and really take a team from like Tennessee last year who couldn't, they were terrible. Robert Saleh, are they a 6-win football team this year compared to what they were last year?
I think that's a realistic outcome for the Titans. Frankly, there's parts that I like for some of the landing spots. There's parts that I don't like. For example, with Stefanski with the Falcons, they have a great defense. I like the pieces that they have on offense with Bijan Robinson, and you have Kyle Pitts, and you have Drake London. I don't like the quarterback situation, right? We know what Stefanski can do with a good offensive line and a good running game and a good defense. But the quarterback situation, I don't love. Michael Penix coming off the injury. I think no one's sold on Tua. What do we get from there? Not sure about that. The Giants with Harborough, okay, you got some pieces. Can Malik Neighbors stay healthy? Cam Scatterbo, Jackson Dart, can they all stay healthy? The edge rushers that the Giants have, pretty darn good. You think you can work with that? Can they push for a wild card this year? I think that is certainly in the mix. We were talking during the break about the Bills and the Ravens. I think those two rosters just have so much talent overall that I think some of the games the coaches may not need to quote unquote coach much because, you're up by 10, 14 points, whatever it's going to be. You kind of just go through the motions. But once they get into those close games late in the season, if they don't go through the process early in the season of struggling, that's when it's coming back to bite them. So I almost want to see some of these teams just kind of ease into things because if they don't have that experience, they're going to make mistakes at the worst possible times.
It's kind of crazy when you look at that AFC North, right? Jesse Mintner with the Ravens now, but a lot of the same pieces there for the Ravens, just new head coach, new voice. And then you look at Mike McCarthy with Pittsburgh. Okay, at least they know Aaron Rodgers is coming back. Outside of that, and we got a Cincinnati head coach who we all thought should have been fired years ago. Is what the most tenured guy? Stefanski's not there, so now you got Monken, who's the new head. So you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals having the veteran leadership of all the coaching staffs in the AFC North is wild to me, and I can make the argument best quarterback as well still in Cincinnati.
I'm always hopeful for the Bengals and for their fans just because Burrow is so good, Jamar Chase is so good, and T. Higgins and, adding Chase Brown. It's going to come down to the same thing. Can they protect Joe Burrow? Can the offensive line just be competent enough to not have him hit 10 times a game? Can we decrease that number to 6? And then can the defense not give up 30 points a game? Because realistically, this offense can go out and score you 24 or 28 points a game. Just don't give up 30. Give up 21, and you still score 28. Now, again, a middle-of-the-road defense and a middle-of-the-road offensive line, and the Bengals are a playoff team, especially in that division. I think they can get past the Ravens or be just as good as them. But really, the dynamic of the AFC puts the Bengals in a playoff spot. Just be competent. Don't be amazing. You just got to be competent.
And listen, you've spent all these years, and all we kept saying was just protect Burrow. No matter what you do, get an offensive line. They thought they had done that last year, and then, of course, injuries right off the bat, and that was the end of that. But you and I have talked about this before. You want to know how the Bengals season's going to go? Talk to me October 1st. Because depending on what they do in September, every year, they're always having to play from behind. They start slow, can't win any games, and then that's it. They're always on a uphill climb. I think the Bengals are the dark horse in that division. I don't think McCarthy's the answer in Pittsburgh. We know Cleveland is Cleveland. I'm not sold on Jesse Mintner, and Baltimore called me crazy. So the Bengals could be your AFC champion. We got more game time decisions coming up here on the grid.
They come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Kyle Sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, he had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Oh, my God. All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. And we do have some decisions to make as we're getting ready for some Major League Baseball here tonight. Some important games coming up at this time of year because, well, it's wide open unless your name is the Dodgers or the Brewers at this point. So a lot of these games over the next 3 to 4 weeks, not to mention just this opening series, Tom, to start the week with a trade deadline around the corner. You know, we talked about it early last week and said, boy, each game matters as we head into the trade deadline. Well, I'm still not quite sure who's going to be a buyer and who's going to be a seller by the time we get to the trade deadline. But I can tell you this, these games that are about to start, Miami at home taking on Philadelphia. Miami's lost 12 in a row here, Tom. This series matters as far as whether or not Miami might be holding pat, or let's face it, this was a team that was 6 games over 500. They won 20 games in June. I mean, this was a legit, team that was going to make a run, and then you lose 12 games straight, and just like that, Sandy Alcantara could be wearing a Yankee uniform. So this series, and it starts tonight. The problem is they got to go up against Zach Wheeler, which is not good news for them.
No, the Marlins, as you said, were essentially the talk of the town for baseball in June. All-Star break comes around, and they haven't won since July 9th, if memory serves me correct. 3 straight losses prior to the All-Star break. A very, very tough series on paper. Now, we talked about this a little bit earlier. The Phillies have been struggling this side of the All-Star break. Now, they started off immediately on that random Thursday game against the Mets. They lost 2 out of 3 versus the Dodgers. They lost 2 out of 3 versus the Yankees. They did win last night. They go for their Sunday night team that's traveling on the road against the a team that is struggling massively. I think the price is a bit much on the Phillies on that money line, even though it's Zach Wheeler. The first 5 under is where I'm looking. I'm not sure we're going to get a whole lot of offense to start the game. I'm not sure we're going to get a whole lot of offense throughout the entirety of that game. So Wheeler's been great. But the Marlins can win this, but it has to be a lower scoring game for them to get it across.
Yeah, it's the only way they're going to get it done. And Sunday Night Baseball, we just watched Philadelphia put 11 runs up on a board. Prior to that, they hadn't put many runs up on the board. They have been struggling to hit. It just has not been a good start after the All-Star break. Phillips, for all his faults, he does walk too many guys, but keeps the ball in the ballpark and keeps it on the ground. I'm shocked. I mean, I'm seeing an 8 in some spots here, but if you think this goes over, that means you probably like Philadelphia. And if that's the case, Tom, Philly on the run line here for the full game?
It's if you like Philly. And if you like the over, you like Philly. And I will say this number has moved since we started the show. It was minus 186, minus 180 or so. It's now to minus 205 for the Phillies on the money line, which is a $2 road favorite coming off of Sunday Night Baseball, coming off of where they've lost 2 series in a row. And I think everyone agrees on paper the Phillies are still the better team compared to the Marlins, but $2 favorite is heavy, all things considered.
Huge is what it is actually here. But again, series is going to go these next 3 games.
Real quick,
Sure.
if the Phillies were at home, what would this line be? If they're $2 favorites on the road, 2.5, 275 at home, right?
I agree, and I'm trying to see if there is I'm looking at the confirmed lineups here because I'm trying to see, is somebody not Otto, Stowers, Hernandez? No, I mean, it's the same old here for the Marlins. So there's really no reason outside of that bullpen having to get involved, which we already know that they can't seem to hold a lead or hold any team down for that matter. It's a whole lot of late Philadelphia money coming in here. It makes sense. I get it. But stranger, that's why they still got to play the games one way or the other. We do have a delayed start time. You mentioned this earlier. Weather in a lot of spots. I know the Midwest, too, right now is going through all sorts of craziness. It looks like Cincinnati and Cleveland right now. Looks like that game is being pushed back to 9 o'clock there, Tom. So that's a game with Burns and Ciccone. They are hoping that the rain there will subside a little bit later. So 9 o'clock now. Nines is what we're seeing some over money. It is the Great American Small Park. But Burns and Ciccone, listen, Burns has been excellent. Neither of these offenses are any good. They strike out far too often. There's no consistency. I'm having a hard time getting to 9 in the rain here. What about you?
Yeah, Burns has been super solid. Obviously, the recipient of that, large contract extension we saw right around the All-Star break. Ciccone, for all his faults, is a medium contact and ground ball pitcher. He doesn't give up too many home runs. He's not a big dominant strikeout pitcher on the mound. There's no doubt that he's not. But the Reds' offense has not been moving as they were earlier in the season. So, given the late start, given some rain, I see this as a slower game in terms of offense. I think the pitchers will do pretty well tonight.
Yeah, I do too. I just think that's, and I'm looking right now, and it's the nothing crazy with the wind. It looks like you're going to have a crosswind right to left. So, and a chance of some showers there in Cincinnati. So I like the under. I even like the first 5 under. The Guardians got back, their best hitter, but what good does that do with Ramirez? Because they can't seem to win or score any runs, and that's been rough go. And all of a sudden now this White Sox game against the Yankees, if the Guardians can't score and they can't put it together, well, are we just handing the division to the White Sox here, Tom?
Listen, the Guardians do this every year where they should be better. They have a great pitching staff. Parker Messick's been super solid. He had a great start yesterday versus the Rays, on the road versus the Rays. Gavin Williams has been awesome. Tanner Bybee's been a little bit up and down, but those 3 starters would be great for a playoff series. Their offense is just never enough. And to see where they sit right now, I'm not going to say they're going to go on the same run they did last year in September, where they win all those games in a row. They come storming back after, and take the division away from the Tigers. But the Guardians should be willing to push chips to the middle and get a hitter at the deadline. The division is up for grabs right now. Go and make a move, Guardians, and do it right this time.
They're going to do something here because the lack of offense is just brutal. And now that you got Ramirez back, you should be able to manufacture some runs one way or the other in that spot there. Also coming up, you got the Blue Jays and the Nats. We told you earlier, Max Scherzer returning to the mound. For what reason, we have no idea. Should be a little bit of a interesting reunion, right, at Nationals Park there. Since, I don't know, he used to play with them a million years ago. But I still think runs could be coming, but I do think a lot of those runs, Tom, are likely coming off of Scherzer and the Nationals bat here, no?
Yeah, they should be. And the first 5 or, the team total for the Nats, I think, is a good spot to look. I will say, just from a top-down perspective, there's a decent discrepancy across some different markets for this game overall. I'm seeing a 10 at DraftKings. It's minus 114 to the over. And the 10 at FanDuel is plus 100. So, that's a decent enough discrepancy. And granted, it's 10.5 at FanDuel. It's not 10 at FanDuel. It's 10.5. But if it goes over and you're winning both, there's plus money on one side. So look for those inefficiencies. I like the Nats team total, and I think the first 5 is a fine spot to look as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't overthink that at all. Coming up, we'll talk about this Yankees-White Sox game here. Anytime you can get Max Fried on the mound at this price point, yep, you got to scratch your head a little bit and look like, what are we doing here? White Sox kind of a little bit in a tailspin here, sending Schultz out. You got the Mets minus Soto taking on the Braves, who get Acuna back. Yeesh, that doesn't look good, except for the pitching matchup, which is a big edge to the New York Mets. So maybe, just maybe, we should be looking at the first 5 numbers there. We'll give those to you when we get back. Not to mention Astros and the Angels, Red Sox, Athletics, and it ends tonight with the Brewers taking on the Giants here. We'll go over all of those games for you. Much more to get to as Game Time Decisions continues on the Grid.
They come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on call sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron.
Listen,
I couldn't help
I
it.
knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
That's also good. All right, welcome back in. Here we go. Game time decisions. We got a few of them to make for you here over the next 18 minutes as Major League Baseball underway. Marlins and Phillies, no score. They're getting started. Wheeler against Phillips there. Coming up within the hour, though, we do have that Yankees and White Sox game, Tom, that we haven't touched on yet. Max Fried against Schultz. White Sox has not been great. Yankees, believe it or not, as anemic as that offense has been, they won another series against Philadelphia. They've actually been pretty competent, given the fact that they're only scoring about 4 runs a game here, even less than that. Max Fried, 1 game back from the IL, looked pretty good, gave 5 quality innings last week. It's the Whites that they're not exactly crushing left-handed pitching. He doesn't walk anybody. Schultz is a 6 ERA guy. That's what he is. Even the Yankees bat should be able to get some runs here, no?
I think so. And Noah Schultz has been, I think the easiest way for me to put it, at least for me personally, is a bit of an enigma for me because, I was very high on Schultz as, I have a share of him or had a share of him on a high-stakes fantasy baseball team, on a dynasty team, deep into the prospects as I normally is. He was a lights-out pitcher at AAA with a nearly 40% strikeout rate. He's at 38.6. He comes to the major leagues. He's dealt with some injuries in the past. He dealt with some more. He's got a 19.4% strike rate. He's dropped 20% compared to the minor leagues. He also has an 11% walk rate. And yes, the Yankees lineup is watered down. There's no Judge, hasn't been that way for a while. Now there's no Bellinger. But if you are letting runners on for free and you do not have the ability to get yourself out of an inning, combined with some home run issues, it presents a danger for any opposing offense, no matter how bad they are, at least in their current stretch. I have a tough time backing the White Sox. I think you could get through with the first 5 with the Yankees in some capacity, and the White Sox may still win the game if they could just get a couple runs across, even though the Yankees bullpen is much better.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any doubt that the Yankees bullpen is much better. Got to be a first 5 situation, I think, here, right? If I'm backing the Yankees, They're minus 140, 145 in the first 5. I think that's the why bother. If Fried versus Schultz, who do you like against those lineups there? I'll take Fried at minus 140, 145. 4.5 is that first 5 total too, Tom.
Yeah, I would certainly look to back Fried in that capacity, especially, just cut the game in half like you like to say and just take the Yankees. I will say we already have runs in the Phillies with a Bryce Harper homer in the top of the first for the Phillies. So when it rains, it pours for the Marlins. And if you bet on a Yurfee for the Phillies, they have already scored in the top of the first, and there's only 1 out.
Yeah, that's interesting to say the least there. Way to go, Phillips. And now his 3rd home run, I guess he's given up at Depot Park. Unbelievable. All we said he had to do was get by Harper and Schwartz. If you can get by those 2 guys, you're going to be fine. Not so much here. Toronto, by the way, underway. We got 1st and 3rd Orioles already looking to strike against Montero and Detroit. And again, what makes this one so interesting is and I believe they did score a run there. I think what makes this interesting, Tom, is the fact that both these teams, here we are, July 27th, something to play for here still. Neither of these teams can be considered out, right?
Yeah, it's a good thing for them. I would say I think the Orioles are actually out of it. If I had to make a determination, the Tigers, just because the division is so bad, that's what gives them a slight step up ahead of the Orioles. The Orioles have a much larger mountain to climb, but the Tigers, going down 1-0 early to start isn't great. But they have to make this a 4-2 week. If they play 6 games, I don't know if they play a full 7, but 4-2 week, if they want to have any shot at keeping Scooble or making a push for the postseason.
So one of the other interesting games coming up here a little bit later is this Astros and Angels. And the Astros have, starting to get, the hitting is there. The bullpen is good. Hunter Brown looks like he's getting back into form. May, I believe, is going for the Astros tonight against this Angels team. I just don't know which one of them shows up. The guy that strikes out 10 dudes a game or the guy who walks 5 a game? Which one do we get here? And that's the problem.
Yeah, considering we're essentially doing a coin flip line of minus 104 for the Angels, minus 112 for the Astros. The Angels love to swing and miss. Listen, that's just been their MO for multiple years. The lineup isn't great. They strike out a ton. Opposing pitchers normally can manage through that lineup and navigate it pretty easily. But there's also some pop in that lineup for the Angels. They also have some amount of power. And if you are letting runners on base for free, it will come back to bite you more often than not. So I think the Astros take the series. I think they take 2 out of 3. The Angels are just not a team that I'm ever looking to back, really.
It feels like maybe this is one of those ladder up strikeout prop kind of nights for him. I think a 6.5, I think was the number. And the Angels are not putting balls into play. They just assume strike out. I mean, I don't see why he can't have some sort of success in this spot. I don't trust the bats of the Angels. Even if you walk a couple of guys, it's not like the Angels are going to make you pay here, but with a guy that has that kind of stuff where you can strike out 10 guys is it worth taking a shot, laddering them up here?
Yeah, I would. And, this is the type of matchup where he can really press it down, in terms of the strikeouts and piling them up. As always, you fall back to the normal 6.5 line. And as you ladder up the number of strikeouts, you decrease the units because, you just want to play it safe. And probability goes down as the plus money increases, it's always nice to see the plus money, but, keep it constrained and, long-term profitability is what we want. Keep those units down as you go up on the strikeouts.
Yeah, no need to get crazy, but yes, it feels like this could be one of those nights where he gets a lot of guys to swing and miss here. We do have a couple of more games, by the way, coming up. The last game is interesting with the Brewers and the Giants, given the fact that I believe this is the first time the Brewers, since the All-Star break, are actually playing a road game, and they just beat up the Colorado Rockies. We'll take a look at this one. Interesting one against the Giants here tonight. Miz is not on the mount. Brandon Sproat is on the mount. Could be a good opportunity for a fade. We'll check out the numbers. We'll let you know what's happening with that one. Boston and the Athletics, and an update with some of these games that are already underway. And Tom, I'm telling you right now, we're going to have some interesting scoring games here tonight on the board. We'll get you updated with it all as Game Time Decisions continues here on the grid.
They come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on call sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, he had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron. Listen, I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Tom Vecchio as we look to close out this edition together. A quick look at the scoreboard with these early games underway. The Orioles 1-0, Tom, over Detroit. Looks like Detroit, though, has got a runner on here. They're in the bottom of the first. You mentioned, didn't take the Phillies long. First inning, 2-run bomb by Bryce Harper, and now the Phillies are up 2-0, although looks like the Marlins have got a runner on. Max Scherzer is throwing batting practice, opening single, base stolen. I think it's just a matter of time before we get to a run or two in that game off of Max Scherzer. But the whole Bryce Harper and it's the only two guys you got to worry about in that ballpark, isn't it?
It certainly is. And things change quickly because it's already 2-2 in the bottom of the first for Phillies and Marlins with, was it Otto Lopez scoring on a throwing error? And then we have another solo homer to tie it up. So if you bet multiple runs, multiple Yurfie bets, or ladder that up to 1.5 Yurfie, you're cashing out with 4 runs in the first inning for Phillies Marlins, which is not something I ever would have anticipated. It's 1-0 in Orioles Tigers, and like you said, for the Blue Jays and Nats, we got runners on first and third, and Scherzer's just throwing meatballs out there. And with the offense that they have, literally the best in the league, highest scoring offense with the Nats, they're going to get some runs across against Scherzer, and we're going to see that come to fruition sooner rather than later. We did tease right before the break about the Brewers and the Giants. Brandon Sproat going for the Brewers, Tyler Mollick going for the Giants. I think the Giants just have, in the midst of a terrible season, the Brewers seem to be on cruise control, only minus 136 for the money line for the Brewers tonight.
Yeah, I mean, first game away, I don't know if that matters much to you, Tom, with this. I mean, it feels like Milwaukee has just been playing at home forever here. It was laughable, that one yesterday. with Miz and company here. But you got a Giants bullpen that's well rested, right? So even if Molly gets into trouble, they'll be able to bring some guys in. We're not talking about a great offense of Milwaukee where, they're going to come in and hit 1 million home runs at Oracle, because that's just not going to happen. So I think this is going to be interesting here in this spot.
Okay. So I would certainly lean on the under in this game, under 8.5. Just, we know it's one of the best pitcher parks in the league. It is time and time again. It's a park that was specifically designed to suppress wind. It's going to be 65 degrees or whatever it is, 62 degrees. It's going to have 11 or 12 miles per hour wind blowing out. You would think that would be good hitting conditions, but the park is designed to eliminate that wind because of where it lies right next to the bay. So, and under 8.5, and frankly, the Brewers bullpen is elite, and they don't give up runs. Yep. That's why they are where they are this year in the standings and the run differential. So under 8.5, Brewers Giants.
So we've got interesting spot coming up for the Red Sox. They're in Sacramento taking on the Athletics here. I thought this might get pushed up to, double digits for a total, given that ballpark. But kind of, even with Kurtz back for the Athletics, it's kind of hard to trust them to provide enough offense, no?
You would like to think they could get it done at home, because if they can't get it done at home, when are they going to get it done? Langoliers is done for the season, given the fact that he had the knee surgery. I specifically like Peyton Tolley, the Red Sox pitcher. I have him over 5.5 strikeouts, sitting at -111. Great strikeout stuff for him. And as I want to note, they play 4 games versus the Athletics, and given the ballpark that they have in Sacramento, things get out of hand quickly. Doesn't matter what the pitching staff is. Those games could all end 10-8. Then they have 3 games against the Dodgers. I don't think the Red Sox want to torch their bullpen on day 1 of a road trip, knowing what they're going to be going up against. So even if he gives up 2, 3, 4 runs, whatever it is, I still think he needs to go out there and just eat some innings. And he's a pretty darn good pitcher with the 26% strikeout rate. So he'll get the strikeouts against the Athletics. I don't know if he makes it through clean, but I like the over 5.5 tonight for Peyton Tolley.
Can't go wrong with that. And Perkins is just getting lit up at home. Granted, it's Sacramento. He's a fly ball pitcher, and that's not something you want to be in that ballpark in the late July and August. So we'll see. There could be some runs coming for Boston, but I just can't trust them. I can't trust the Athletics to contribute enough to try to get this thing up and over, especially against Tolley, who you mentioned has been pretty darn good here. So looking across the board here, Tom, what's your favorite play here? Is there a dog on the card you'd look at?
A dog on the card? Frankly, it would be, it might be the White Sox full game. And listen, we like the Yankees first 5, but I don't know if the full game would be the spot to back the Yankees. You want to back them first 5, that's fine. But the White Sox, this is a big proving point for them. The Yankees coming to town. They're sitting in first in the division. The White Sox, that is, they got to win this game.
A lot of baseball coming your way. Good news is In-Game Live is coming up. We'll see you again tomorrow on Game Time Decisions.
They come in a lot more better prepared to play than, say, we did, having to learn some of the things that we learned coming into the NFL that we weren't learning in college. A lot of these kids are getting quarterback coaches, as far back as junior high school and all the way through high school into college. So I think the position is a lot more stronger than it's ever been.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on call sheet. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Scoogle. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron. I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.